Welcome to Trekkie and Beyond, a Star Trek podcast. I'm Moneca.
And I'm Andrea. And welcome to episode 8, 6, and 7 of season 5 of Lower Decks. These were some very interesting episodes. We have Beckett being an amazing mentor and actually being amazing and no hidden agenda and no trying to sabotage. Like what? And then we have the green-eyed monster coming on while they're orange with the purple person. There's a lot of colors in this episode, and there's just a lot to discuss as well.
Once again, Lower Decks is able to pull off storylines in this animation series that they can't pull off in live action. Because between the cubes, the squares, just the way that the storylines are presented to us makes it much more realistic in animation. That's kind of weird to say, but it is. Because if it was in live action, I would not take this seriously at all. Mm-hmm. So it was a fun ride. I'm hoping this builds up to something bigger. It feels a little bit of a filler, but it was fun. And it's nice to see T'Lyn back.
I enjoyed these 2 episodes. They were fun. They reminded me a little bit more of season 1 of Lower Decks, of all the episodes were hodgepodges and just things the season was just, we were seeing certain cuts of their world. We were, jumping in, watching, pulling out. There was no rhyme or reason. It was just them exploring and going and boldly going. I enjoyed the cubes and the spheres and the little war, and they're not imaginative. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the little fun part at the end that we'll talk about later. I was a little annoyed that it seems that while Beckett finally has her ish together, it's the rest of the Lower Deck crew is falling apart. We always see them pulling Beckett up, and now we see Beckett being good, and all of them are dealing with jealousy, more insecurity, just random craziness that I don't really expect from them at this point in their careers. So except for T'Lyn, holding it down with my Vulcan girl. Live long and prosper, Vulcan. Live long and prosper. But yeah, I'm enjoying these episodes. I just find the character parts of it a little weird. So let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to talk about episode 6. And I honestly forgot about the Zeus part of the Zeus-ish character from Star Trek, which I thought was very interesting. So what did you think of episode 6?
I'm intrigued by Ensign Ali. They're introducing a new character kind of close to the end. We're 3 episodes away from the end. And interesting character. It kicked off 6 other ships. And she seems to be the way Beckett Mariner used to be. Mm-hmm. And so she's chosen to mentor an older version of herself. But she realizes that's much harder than she previously thought. That's how it started.
I found it very interesting because I'll admit I didn't know where this episode was going when we met this new ensign. I thought she was trying to get kicked off. I thought she was doing all these things wrong on purpose. Literally, I was oh, she doesn't want to be in Starfleet. She's just here for some reason. Maybe her family forced her. I don't know. But I definitely did not think I thought she was doing all of this on purpose. I definitely did not think it was all accidents happening because of just random accidents. I like that Beckett stood up for her. Because Ransom had a lot more leeway for Beckett when all of her talk backness, and then we just meet this new character and Ransom's I can't take her. Either Beckett broke him and he no longer has patience, or she's a lot worse than we are aware of, or what they showed us on the show. So I found it very interesting that Beckett was actually being the one to advocate for saving a person, instead of she must be, instead of there being a secret conspiracy where we see her trying to do things underhandedly. She's no, I'm going to save this character. So I thought it was a very interesting aspect coming from that point of it for Beckett to be the person to actually I'm standing up for this ensign. Ransom, you don't know what you're talking about. She's a great person. And then for it to sort of turn out the reason the ensign was failing throughout the entire episode was because she was hiding a huge part of herself. And instead of just explaining to her crews and her teams of the 6 other ships she was on that, hey, I actually do have electrical powers. And so sometimes they short out electrical stuff. Please give me some like leeway. She just lets them like kick her off their ship onto another ship. Though I will say Taylin noticed it in the beginning when she had the little lever thing that let people think, the thing that goes up and down, so that she didn't have to like get up and move crates. She could be sitting down and moving crates. And it shorted out, and Taylin pointed out, oh, that was a surge. So I found it very interesting that she was like Beckett, but then Beckett had to realize, oh wait, you're not actually fighting the man, you're fighting yourself. You're fighting your powers, and you're trying to be a good Starfleet person, but your powers are getting in the way versus you're actually getting in your own way. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think Ransom was in a different state because for Beckett, she's also the captain's daughter. So there's a different level of like forgiveness and how much room you want to give someone to fail when they're reporting to your boss compared to someone that has been kicked off of 6 other ships. And we've noticed that Ransom has also lately been mentoring um, Brad Boimler. And so it's interesting to see his character come along with this. I'm concerned because it seemed like she was, as you said, been hiding this for such a long time, but at least there was a true consequence to her action. And Captain Freeman, whose character has come a long way in 5 seasons, loving her now. Ollie was sentenced to time in a break.
Like, hey, that cot's pretty comfortable. And Marina's like, I'm going to force you to be my friend. And as someone who has basically made a lot of her adult friends by forcing them to be my friend, I understand that. It was almost like Beckett was looking at a mirror in the sense that everything was opposite. Like, so like she's looking at herself, but instead of her trying to like think of there being a hidden agenda from Starfleet, and there's like, oh, I don't care about Starfleet rules, I'm going to do my own thing to actually help people. Ollie was like, I really believe in Starfleet. I really want to do the right thing. Crap, I have powers and my electrical powers keep shorting out and I'm not doing a good job. So I'm going to hide why I'm not doing a good job. And so hopefully people will still like me. And oh no, I'm still not doing a good job. But I still won't tell the truth and be like, oh, I'm just going to cover up evidence and I can make lightning bolts. I just won't tell them because secrets. And so I just thought it was a very interesting scene for them. But the other, I guess what's supposed to be the main story is the Cerritos is brokering peace between orbs and spheres. And that's what they are. They're glowing orbs and glowing spheres who hate each other for one being a cube shape and the other one being a circle, a sphere shape. The teenage boy is missing and of the cubes. And they're searching the ship trying to find him. And then we find out that the daughter of the spheres is missing. It was like, oh, this is Romeo and Juliet. That's what this one is. Like, I will admit, the moment I found out it was a boy and a girl missing, I knew they were with each other. And it was really cute to see see them make the big cube and the big sphere, and Ransom, like, they have no imagination. They're just bigger of themselves. Okay, yeah, they're more full of themselves. Great. To see though that the sphere and the cube fell in love and had another little shape, which I don't know the name of that shape, but they had another little shape that was a mix of a cube and a sphere. And it was also nice seeing the father of the new baby freak out when the baby poops. Like, I don't know what to do. I've been to parent for 5 minutes. I thought that whole storyline was just a little wacky and it was fun. And I didn't view it as important. I just viewed it as something that was going on to further the storyline of Ollie. Because I I don't know. I don't see the point of the cubes in Fear. I just thought they were just adorable and funny and interesting to see. But to me, even though it was technically, I guess, the main storyline because it was the important thing that the Cerritos was supposed to be doing, and they spent the episode looking for the son and then looking for the daughter and trying to stop them to fight. It was just a fun little part of that episode. What did you think of that storyline?
So this storyline was better for me the second watch.
Okay.
Because then I got more of the raunchy humor. Because then looking back at the scene where
no
where it all happened.
No.
Then it was
your father.
This is a whole different thing. But when in the initial watch, I was just perplexed. It took me a long time to get over just the fact that it was just orbs and cubes. That took me a while until the light burned out from one of them, and in one of the interrogation scenes where Oli and Beckett were like good cop, bad cop, but that didn't end up well. But in that, when one of the orbs lost the light and was talking about like if it was naked and stuff like that, then I cared a little bit more than it was just a shape before. Then it started to develop more personality traits. And so I could see more, I guess, human factors that I could relate to in these orbs and cubes that were just like geometry to me. I didn't care as much. And so then in the second watch, when I was like, oh, that's where they were getting it on, then it was like, oh, there's a lot more personality here.
She told her father he's a rough or rambunctious lover.
Eager lover. Yep.
And I love Ollie was like, ew, I thought I touched it. I thought that was evidence. And it was literally like I like Lower Decks goes there, but when I say I was shocked, thank you for bringing that up. Because when I say I was shocked, 10 out of 10, they did what? And then like in the Lower Decks, like what? Like I know they made a kid. We see the little kid. I love how the mom's like, do not give him juice. He has so much energy. I don't think I'll ever be comfortable enough with my mother to ever describe that act with her. Like I could never ever be comfortable enough like, oh yeah, he's just a rambunctious lover. No. I will never have a conversation like that in front of my mother. Like especially my father. Oh my gosh, no. So when that scene happened, I think I blocked it out of my mind because my brain is like, you can't say that in front of your parents. Why would you say that in front of your parents?
And not only in front of your parents, but also like their whole team that was with them and the diplomats, Starfleet, all these strangers. And at one time, she said, leaving a mess is part of our kink.
Like it's like everyone knows how a child is made, but no one talks about how a child is made. It's just a thing that you just don't talk about. Even when you go to tell your family, we're pregnant, no one ever says, oh, well, you got it in last night, because like you just don't talk about it. Like your family knows, but no one says anything out loud. And that is the world we need to live in with these cubes and spheres and these cubes and orbs. Live in that world where this is not said out loud, because my raised Southern Baptist self was like, you said what in front of your parents?
Maybe this is to actually distract us from like, well, how does this actually happen between these cubes and orbs? We don't need to know. We got completely distracted with this case. And Ollie knows that there was a square done.
On that note, so the other C storyline, but we had a little small C line of Boimler being Boimler. And I have to say, he made somewhat of a good point. It was still a stupid point, but it was somewhat of a good point. When Tendi was like, you need to be yourself. It's like, stop trying to be someone else. He's like, I'm not. I'm trying to be myself from a different universe. On paper, you are being yourself, but you're not, because you're trying to be like a version of yourself that doesn't exist in this universe. But at least you're not trying to be like Riker or someone else. You were literally being a version of yourself that you theoretically can be, because you were. There is a version of you out there in a different universe who can do this, who grew the beard, and it's coming in. The beard's coming in slowly. It's not connecting yet. It's not connecting yet, but it's coming in. But it was very interesting to see that at the end of this episode, the whole point of the whole point of this sea line was he was trying to get in with the doctor, because the other version of him was friends with her. I love how both Tindy and Rutherford are such science and computer freaks that they're like, oh, you're reading the pad? I can tell differently because this is like 0.18 millimeters bigger, or the dial is slightly bigger. And Boimler's like, it's red. That is a giveaway that is from a different universe. That is how my iPad, because I can't remember what it's called. I'm calling it an iPad. That is how my iPad is different. Because here it's silver, there it's red. It's a red iPad. That is how it's different. And they're like, oh, yeah, the obvious thing. I liked that Boimler was trying to be more like himself. It would be better if it came from inside him than another version of him. At least he's not trying to be like the clone, who's creepy. The clone was creepy. And we haven't seen the clone yet, and I'm still wondering if we're going to. We only have a couple more episodes left of the season. That's just a side note, people. But Boimler at the end got what he wanted. He got in with the doctor. Dr. Ta'ana. He is invited to her book club, and he's getting closer to the bridge crew. And makes me think and wonder, was this not how the other Boimler might have gotten in? Did he do something stupid as well? And that's how, like, did she call him Flip because he tried to do a flip and failed and broke something? And the name Flip is one of her like actual insults, but it looks endearing, because now his new name is FO. I'm not going to say it on the podcast because we're trying to keep it PG-13. And so it's like her nicknames seem nice, but it comes from a funny or bad act that happened to Boimler, because this time he had a lightning bolt stuck up his behind. And so it makes me think maybe the name Flip came because the other Boimler tried to impress her by doing a flip or jumping or something and failed miserably. So she calls him Flip because he could not flip. I don't know. Your thoughts?
My thoughts here is that Boimler always has to be extra. like, like he knows that just Dr. Tahina just naturally curses a lot. But that doesn't mean you have to try to go above him. She's going to know, because all these other years you've known each other, you haven't been cursing like that. So it's not natural for you. You're trying desperately to be part of her book club, but every time you do this, Boimler, I feel as though it ends up with some sort of physical altercation in which you get hurt. Or once you died and came back. But like, like there's always pain involved. And it's tough. I see it as repeating over and over and over again. And I want so much more for his character. I thought we'd grown past this.
Oh, and we've also seen one other thing happen that was not supposed to happen. Rutherford is falling for the other pad's wisdom, because at the end of this episode, Tindy's like, what did we learn? And Rutherford's like, the pad was right. And she's like, no, that's not what we're saying. And now Rutherford, who I will admit, Rutherford and Boimler being friends and roommates is still adorable and hilarious to me, because it was Boimler and Beckett and Tindy and Rutherford, and now it's like Rutherford and Boimler, and I find that very adorable and I love it. I just find Rutherford, don't do it. You have the implant for a reason. You're smarter than him. You're so much smarter than him. It's called Fully Dilated, which I don't know why. There's a part of me that like gets it why it's called Fully Dilated, and there's another part of me that's just like the terminology for why I know that term doesn't fit this episode. But if you're talking about the transport dial, then maybe. Or maybe I'm just overthinking the title, which is also a possibility because you guys know me. I overthink a lot of things. But this episode is all about an away mission, Moneca's favorite. And this episode, they are on a planet where another rip has happened and a enterprise that's purple came through, and they left stuff on a planet that has yet to hit warp capability. So according to the Prime Directive, they can't interfere with a planet's progress, which in my opinion is stupid. Help other planets. But that's not a conversation for this episode. But neither here nor there. The Cerritos is going down to destroy the leftover equipment and stuff that was left from the purple Enterprise. And the people are orange, and Tendi is green. There's a lot of colors in this episode. I just really wanted to make that joke. I'm sorry, people. Moneca's looking at me like I'm crazy. But in this episode, Tendi is facing a lot of self-discovery and like fear and within herself, because she has a chance to be promoted, but also Taylin has the same exact chance to be promoted. And Tendi, sometime being Tendi, sort of feels insecure about her position within Starfleet. And so she almost feels like she needs to compete against Taylin. And Taylin, my Vulcan homie, it's just, I'm out here doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not even competing with you. Is this a competition if I didn't know we were competing? She didn't say that. I did. Just saying. We have Beckett trying to have a on-planet experience. And then we have the reason why Rutherford should never listen to Boimler. Just never listen to Boimler and never bring food into the transport room. So let's discuss this episode. What did you think, Moneca, of just sort of the opening part of it? We see another rip. We see another ship from another dimension has come through. And it's looking like there's more and more of these fissures happening. What are you thinking?
So that's the part that I wanted more of. Mm-hmm. Because also after this, we have 3 more episodes left. And so they have a lot to wrap up into 3 episodes regarding this rift, the spatial rift, dimensional, whatever's going on in a dimension. So I think this is maybe our 3rd or 4th rift. And in this case, everything's purple. So the ship was purple, and then later on we'll encounter Data, who's purple. I like overall the girls' trip and the guys working together. So those teamwork aspects.
Were the guys working together, or were they working to stop their failure?
Working together to stop their failure. But I, though, have a problem with like Freeman giving the lieutenants full authority to solve this mystery, this case, and to visit this planet, when I feel like there's more senior officers that should have gone on this away mission.
But it was taquito night. Sorry? So that's why. It was taquito night. So that's why the lieutenants had it, because they didn't want to miss taquito night.
So in leadership, you have to choose your priorities, and perhaps leaving Boimler and Rutherford in the transporter room was not the best idea.
Where was Jet? Jet would not have let this happen. Where was Jet? Where's my homie? Bring Jet back. Jet would have made sure there was no food next to their transporter, because they were drinking a Bloody Mary thing that had all the fixins, which, why? Bloody Marys in itself are disgusting, but with all that crap on it, why? Why were we doing this?
Right. It was over the top, and even Taylin was like, this is not normal for you all. Why are you doing this? It seemed like they were showing off. They were like trying to say, nah, we have something going on and you don't, or something. I don't know. It was weird.
Growing his beard. Because why, Rutherford? Your person was a full-on robot.
And it's it's not like the food's freshly cooked. It's generated from a replicator, so they could have this at any time. They could just reschedule it for the next day.
But it was the dancing they were gonna miss. That's what Becca said. But neither here nor there. They find themselves on the planet, and they immediately run into the town scaredy cat, or what's the term for that?
Nosy neighbor.
The nosy neighbor. But no, there's like a conspiracy freak, like the town conspiracy freak, who is like, oh, who are you? I don't know you. You're not around here. Oh, there's something bigger going on. I'm going to get to the bottom of this mystery. And it's like, hey, mind your business. You know where there's not a mystery? At your house. Why don't you go there? Go. Stop. There's no conspiracy. The world turns because it turns. But this interesting thing about this planet is that a second on the Cerritos is a week on the planet. So all that Boimler and Rutherford had to do was beam them down, and immediately, and when I say the word immediately, I mean your finger barely comes off the button of transport, and then you hit the transport again. Like double hit. All you had to do, hit once, like literally 2 seconds. Do 1 second, because 1 second is literally a week. And in true Boimler fashion, when the girls get beamed down, somehow he drops his drink all over the transporter pod display computer thing. And somehow Rutherford does too. And they can't see the screen. And instead of doing the smart thing of running to get something to clean it up, they decide to spend precious seconds and minutes trying to clean up with their shirts and then licking the computer, which in turn, remember, every second that they are wasting is another week on the planet. And so while for them, they have been freaking out for 30 seconds, maybe a full minute, a year has gone by on the planet. A year. And I feel like every show of a Star Trek series has like an episode like this where someone experiences time differently than someone else on the ship. Some way, somehow, some shape or form. There's someone who's like, it was a second for us. How long was it for you? A year. I was here by myself a year, or I waited years for you to come and find me. So I found like, I was like, okay, at least they're keeping true to that storyline from every Star Trek show. At least someone experiences time. We saw it in Discovery when at the beginning of season 3, she experienced a year in the future by herself until her ship came, even though they were literally only a second behind her through the warp tunnel, through the little tunnel thing. It was a year for her. And just, what did you think, before we get into the episode of like the main part of what happened while they were on the planet, what did you think of this was going to be another one of those type of episodes?
I did not think about that. And that's a really good point, because I think of like the Harry Mudd episode with time in Star Trek Discovery. But what I noticed is that there's other compads. Like, couldn't you have gone over to the wall? Couldn't you like have gone to some other machine? Why did and we've seen it in other cases in which they start here here, and then they go over and they split up. Like 2 people split up and they work it out on 2 different screens. Why can't they just go to another computer pad? Oh no, but that's just me thinking logically.
Logically. Logically.
This is why you need a senior officer there.
Okay, so the main point of this story, of this episode, of this storyline, the A storyline, is they spend a year on this planet. So when they get there, immediately they get through town, they get to the crater, they find Data's head, they find the wreckage, they're destroying it, and Data's head is dead because he has no body to, I guess, give him power. However, Data works. And while they are trying to get back to the Cerritos, they wait and they wait and they wait and they continue to wait until they decide to make a little bit of a life for themselves on the planet. And the conspiracy theorist, Snell, just never lets them go. Like, just never gets bored of getting up in their business, because why? Why, Snell? Why? We see that Taylin is taken to the planet really quickly. She makes grapes the size of melons. She makes luxurious hair products. And can you hook a sister up? Just make it long, luscious, and flowing. What are we doing? And then we see Tendi have a crisis of science. Because she is feeling lackluster next to Taylin, because she's trying so hard to. I've cataloged all their flora and fauna, and Taylin's like, oh well, I am starting their I'm farming now. Oh, great. Taylin, Tendi creates a hand crank power battery to bring Data's head back to life. And Taylin makes grapes the size of melons, and the melons can't fit through the door. And then Tendi's like, well, I got to figure out more things to do. And Taylin's like, oh, well, I've created hair products. And the problem is, Taylin wanted Tendi to work with her. And she was doing all of this and hoping that Tendi would be intrigued and want to work with her so they could work together. And Tendi took it as, oh, we're competing against each other. And I just have to say, if the person you are competing with doesn't even know you're competing with them and they're outperforming you, just take several seats. So Tendi, you my girl. You my girl. We like this. Like, we like this. I promise you, we like this. But honey,
I was really on Talin's side here, and I felt that this was uncharacteristic for Tendi.
Very much.
I felt like, once again, her character has evolved further her husband and seemed just childish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not quite, and it wasn't well founded. I understand that she wants the promotion. I don't even think Talin was thinking about the promotion at all, because she just feels as though she's lucky to be there. And I think she just had a hard time at her other ship, that she's just learning new things and going about the job. She's just in survival mode. Like, oh, and we need power, I'll build a windmill. We need this, I'll do that. She's just solving problems. And I felt like Tendi was taking it too personal. Right? And so they weren't working together. But I don't even think Mariner knew or even tried to help, because she was on her own side quest.
We're going to talk about Mariner's side quest in a moment, because but you bring up an interesting point. Only Taylin was doing stuff to improve their time on the planet. She built a windmill for power. She grew themselves food. She made them money. Because even though they don't plan to stay on this planet forever, they don't know how long they're stuck there. And so Taylin's like, well, if we're going to be here, I want to eat every day. I want some of the things I have at home, and that includes whatever a windmill can do for me. And I want money to pay for food. And so it's very very interesting. Tendi was focused on literally herself. Taylin was focused on all three of them, and Beckett was like, I want to get married, have kids. But it's also very interesting that Beckett was trying to have a full life on this planet. She was like, I want to find a husband or find a wife, have some kids, make a best friend, and in pure Beckett fashion, she ended up in prison.
But I felt like Beckett was trying to live the life that she heard Picard lived.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't her. Like, it wasn't her dream. It's not on her bucket list. It was like, oh, this is what someone else who's successful did. I need to check all these boxes and learn how to play the flute.
Because it's like, how many times, like, because in her mind, she will spend a year there and she'll go back, like, it won't have any lasting consequences on her life. Though, let's be honest, if you have kids on this planet, Beckett, and then like you leave the planet and you're gone for like a week, and then you come back and your child has grown up, had their own child, and died, that's going to have some lasting effects. But I thought it was like, oh, when in Rome. Oh, wait, you're right, Tindy. I do have a chance to have a life, experience something versus just sitting here and waiting. And I love that she found her people in jail. Except for when the guy she was hugging was like, oh yeah, and 2 of us murder people. Shh, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that. I just want to know I found my people here in jail. I feel like Beckett just, those are her people. Those are her people. And I love Beckett. I feel like she found herself a bit in this episode. It's sort of sad that your people are people who are in jail, but you know, when you're rough around the edges, you help smooth each other out. I'm trying to say something deep and wise. It's not working. I'm sorry, Beckett.
I would have liked this episode better if Oli joined them and T'Lyn, Tendi, and Mariner were showing Oli how to conduct themselves in away missions and not to use her powers, no electricity, like, and how to be low key, and like like I felt like, and like they had these leadership roles as mentors for her, but that they were working together. And then Data communicated, oh, I believe that these 2 individuals, Tendi and T'Lyn, should become co-senior science officers because they were able to supervise and mentor together. And like, I would feel better if and then there was a connection with Oli. I would feel better if it was some way like that instead of them working separately, because they didn't work together. It doesn't prove that they could be co-leaders because they didn't lead together.
Because they didn't communicate. And I'll be honest, Taylin brought up a good point. She was like, to be the science officer, you have to communicate. And obviously, I did not do that well. And obviously, Tendi, you didn't do it well either. Neither one of you communicated. Neither one of you should have been promoted. Let's be honest. Neither one of you should have been promoted in this episode. But the difference is, I don't think Taylin would have cared if she wasn't, because she also, you know, she's like, she was banished to Starfleet. Tendi chose to be at Starfleet. And Data only saw Tendi go crazy. And if I was Data, I would have told the captain, hey, not yet. Because you don't need your senior science officer having mental breakdowns on planets, because they refuse to sleep because they're trying to physically keep up with someone who physically is different than them. If Vulcans only, like, for example, Vulcans only need 2 hours of sleep, but you require 8, you're never going to work on 2. It's just not going to work. You can't, like, Tendi, you're not the same.
And since Tendi was distracted, she didn't notice that Snell was getting closer and closer to knowing it all. And to sharing all their information with the rest of the town. Therefore, violating the Prime Directive.
Because we saw her so confident when she was with the Orions. And so, I mean, she still did stupid stuff with her sister, but like she was taking over a ship. Like Tindy is a badass who tries to be a ditz, and I don't understand it. I don't get why they're trying to do her character this way. Let her be a badass in science without having these like bouts of insecurity and feeling inadequate. You are the mistress of the winter constellations. Own it in everything that you do. Own it. You want Orions to be better? Use what you have to be better.
Yeah, I hope that now that she's promoted, she doesn't have like imposter syndrome or something like that. I hope this it's now behind us, because once again, we only have 3 episodes left.
I'll be honest, I'm gonna cry when this season is over, because I did not know what to expect when Lower Deck started, and I have loved every season, every second, almost every episode. I'm gonna miss this show, and I'm not ready. I don't know if I'm gonna watch the last 3 episodes. I might be lying to you guys. We'll never know. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I found one other scene in this episode interesting, and that's when Dr. Tahana made their, I don't know, tentacles. And so, and she was complaining about not being involved in like cosmetic surgery and different things like that. But that's just the way her character is just constantly sarcastic and wants to focus on like true medicine and not like physicals and all these other things. But it's part of her job. But I like the fact that there's several other leadership characters that have been consistent throughout all 5 seasons. I'm just disappointed in the way these 4 main characters are just inconsistent recently, just in this season.
Beckett has been consistently crazy, but consistently on an upward trajectory. Still crazy, but on a positive note. Like she's not
been up and down, up and down, up and down too.
She has not been trying to sabotage any. Like she's been trying to actively protect her people, which is a first for her. And this season, she has been full Starfleet ahead. And my final thought of this episode, so Moneca can't yell at me, is that the Prime Directive is stupid. If there's literally aliens out there listening to me right now and you can like break the Prime Directive, break the Prime Directive. I want to go to space.
No. The Prime Directive is like colonialism. No. Just because you're coming in as an intruder doesn't mean that you should change their culture to do what the intruder did.
No. Just give us the science. We'll get there. Give us the science. Drop this knowledge on us like a brick and let me go to space. Let me meet aliens and let us live out Starfleet. I got one life. I want to live it in space. That is my final thought. Thank you for listening and watching. As always, I am Andrea.
And I'm Moneca.
And live long and prosper.